Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche's first work, published when he was about 28, centers around the figure of Dionysus, Greek god of wine. And he posits a conflict between Dionysus, god of ecstasy and of primordial urging, conflict between Dionysius and Apollo, the god of Greek beauty, refined lines, golden shines, and dreamlike illusions. The dark, brooding Dionysius, destructive, anarchic, breaking through into the realm of measured classical Apollo. And the impact of these two conflicting characters on each other produces for Nietzsche Attic tragedy, which is the dramas of the ancient Greeks. That artwork, which would have incorporated acting, scenic stages, and singing, and some music. So in the first book, he's obviously looking at that as a comparison to Wagner's total artworks. But beyond that influence of Wagner, and indeed the influence of Schopenhauer in the slightly metaphysical interpretation he makes in that book, that first book, Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche, by using the image of Dionysius, actually captures in that one word what becomes the whole of his philosophy. If one meditates on Dionysus in his totality, one has a picture of Nietzsche's philosophy without words. It's all there, the eternal recurrence, the will to power, the pathos of distance. All the things we've talked about are there within the Dionysian image. And it's a Dionysius which sublimates the Apollonian. So the Greek beauty, the Greek of fine lines and golden beauty, is sublimated under the terror and the all-annihilating power of a Dionysus. And it is that subsumed duality that is the Nietzschean philosophy. And he carries on with the image of Dionysus through his works, often associating himself with Dionysius, his philosophy with that of Dionysius himself as a disciple of Dionysius. It's a leitmotif through his work. And it culminates in the very latter stages of his life as he starts to fall into insanity with a total identification with Dionysus and a total abysmal, annihilating, self-annihilating identification with that Dionysus. But in between that first book and the last reaches of the Antichrist or Ecce Homo or the Twilight of the Idols in those latter stages, in between that, we see an interesting duality, opposition, evolve, which is maybe more hidden to sight. And we notice that his main concern in between those two extremes of his philosophy, the beginning and the end, is a concern with Christian morality and of rejecting Christianity. And so we see that the conflict between Dionysus and Apollo, which we see in the Birth of Tragedy, actually becomes a conflict between Dionysus with a sublimated Apollo, Dionysus of the Nietzschean philosophy, conflict between Dionysus and Christ. In one of his last invectives, it's Dionysus versus the crucified. So we see that, in a sense, Christianity or Christ can be seen as Apollo or the Apollonian, and that the conflict between Nietzsche and Christianity is very much the conflict between Dionysus and Apollo. And this leads us to the next image, which occurs in the 19th century and on, and that is the image of Christ, the Krist as Apollo, and that is the Arian Christianity that's prevalent in some areas of Germany and German thought in the 19th century. So this is a Christianity which is non-Semitic. It is based on classical, Arian, Greco-Roman principles. And it is that clean-limbed but illusory and dreamlike Christianity which is opposed by the raging Dionysian philosophy of Nietzsche and Zarathustra. And yet again, we would look to another sublimation of the Apollonian Christ into the totality of the Dionysian stroke Zarathustran image. And it is this latter which is the Nietzschean religion of the future, the Zarathustra Reich of 1,000 years, a prophecy.